a hole and definitely pick up some wins, get above 500. All right, before we get to our next sports, excuse me, next before we get to our next sports topic, we'll go back to some more tech with Will. And when we last left off, we were talking about the privacy acts and that possibly might be going through Congress. The
Oh, you're talking about SOPA, PIPA?
Yes.
Well, those are a little bit in the past, but I wanted to bring those up in connection with kind of the privacy thing.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of this concern over privacy and companies tracking you, that stems out of the RIAA, the Recording Industry Association of America, and the film industry doing certain things like DRM, digital rights management.
Yep.
They tried putting that as an embedded thing in DVDs, so that you'd buy a DVD or a video disc.
Okay.
The DVD you owned. The video disc had a limited number of uses before it wouldn't work anymore.
Right.
And that failed because everybody knew how to get around it. It's the same thing right now. They're fighting against BitTorrents. They're fighting against these streaming websites that broadcast stuff. If you go back 100 years, no such thing as copyright protection.
Right.
If you bought a movie, you bought the movie, and you could show it to anybody. Even if at the time movies were silent films, it was still a matter of you buy the film,
right,
and then you use it. Friday night you show the film in your bar. You didn't have to have permission to do that because you had just bought the film. It came inherent with the product. In like the 1920s, they came out with this concept of copywriting because it is meant to protect the small man. You go in, you're a script writer, you pitch the script. You don't want the studio saying, that's nice, and then turning around making the movie.
Right.
So you would copyright your script. It was always meant to protect the individuals. It was never meant to protect corporations. And so, touching back on things like this privacy invasion and things like that, a lot of that is proprietary technology that is not open source. Google Glass is an open source project, but some of the other ones like iTunes, is not. And unfortunately, everything you do with your iPhone or iDevice has to be done through iTunes. You can't even put pictures on your computer without using iTunes, and that's how Apple tracks what you're doing.
Yep.
There's no outside, organization that monitors what Apple is actually recording that you're doing. How many minutes you spend on that website that your fiance doesn't want you looking at. And I, of course, am talking about sports.
Yes, of course. Do you think there should be some kind of an unbiased company sent in to audit what these companies are tracking so that they're not invading privacy?
Unfortunately, that won't work for the simple reason, if I'm recording all of your data onto an external hard drive, it's just like, let's go search for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and all these, UN groups are running around. They have to pre-announce where they're going, and what that means is we get to move stuff around, because that's the rules of the country. If I go as an outside influence to inspect Microsoft's, recording capabilities, the first step I have to do is at the reception. I can't just ninja in through a window.
Right, exactly.
And at that point, they're going to hit that magical button that says
shred,
or just move the data. It's with the pipeline that a lot of these companies have. It's nothing for them to just keep certain data separate. Financial tracking records of, say, Congress. And have that in a special encrypted folder that is on this drive and doesn't exist anywhere else. They're not using a RAID setup to clone it out.
Right.
And the moment someone comes in to check it out, disconnect it, and it walks down the street. It saves them from being hit by legal reasons. And for the most part, they're able to do that because you give them permission. Mm-hmm. How many people actually... South Park hit that on one of their episodes, I think, of season 7. Mm-hmm. The human eye centipede.
Yes, I think I remember that one, yeah.
Where one of the characters signed, the iTunes agreement, and all of a sudden they could use them in whatever they wanted, So almost no one actually reads these agreements. I'll skim through it, but I'm not going to read a 7-page agreement when I'm signing up for, a free email account.
Right, exactly.
It's supposed to serve just one purpose, sending email. Mm-hmm. But little you know that you might be signing up for the ability to have, what emails you're sending recorded and reported for marketing purposes. You're having your ad traffic sorted and sent in. Did you view this ad? Did you view it for more than 5 seconds? So there's a lot of things that you sign away without necessarily realizing it. Mm-hmm. And there's really no legal recourse for going after the companies recording that information.
Because you already signed.
You already signed it.
Consent.
And where that figures in with the digital rights and the copyright protection, all of us feel that our information is our own.
Right.
What I post up on Facebook is mine. Nobody else should have access to it.
Well, how many friends do you have on there that have the access? I mean, yeah. I remember seeing a story that there's so many people that post stupid stuff on Facebook and about, them getting drunk or them getting, parties or whatever the case is. Think about it this way, and this is one thing that always stuck with me. These people that are putting these stupid pictures up on Facebook are future leaders of the country. They're future congresspeople, they're future mayors, governors, whatever you want to call it. And all of our stuff, I mean, you talk about people digging up dirt in people's pasts. When you have all this stuff on Facebook, all you got to do is go look at it. I mean, there are a ton of people out there that, post the stuff that, Joe Schmo is going to run for governor, but yet, look at this, 10 years ago, he was in college at Tulane University, and he was playing beer pong.
Or, yeah.
So it's amazing, and, unfortunately, that's how we judge our public figures, by stuff that's happening in their past.
Not to mention with systems like that, Facebook and Twitter, one mistake, even if it's an innocent mistake, so rapidly spreads out.
Yep.
There was in Congress, Texas State Congress. Mm-hmm. They were holding a hearing where they were talking amongst themselves about the dangers of marijuana. Mm-hmm. And one of the state representatives was talking about, how marijuana is dangerous and addictive and should not be available for anybody, that should be criminalized, in possession. He leans over and a joint falls out of his pocket in the middle of the House of Representatives.
And that video went viral.
In literally 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. And you want to talk about no time for his PR to put any kind of spin on it.
Yeah.
Immediately it's like, you, sir, are a two-faced liar and probably going to jail now.
Yeah.
I don't know what the limit on possession is in Texas.
Right. Exactly. And it's funny because it's true. Or should I say it's not funny because it's true?
Oh no, it's funny because it's true. If you're going to be up in a position of power like that, where you can actually determine the rules that other people have to follow, when I was in the military, I was an MP, and we had to be paragons of behavior.
Right.
If we do something dumb, it looks bad for everybody because we're supposed to be the ones enforcing the law.
Exactly. Yep.
If you're a government person and you're responsible for passing laws, you can't pass a law as you're breaking a law.
Right. Well, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the people in power do get away with breaking laws. I mean, this whole cell phone law that came out, what is it now, 3 years ago, where you had to have a hands-free piece to talk on your phone in your car while you're driving. So
Bluetooth or
right,
something like that.
Whatever. How many times you look around and you see cops talking on their phone or having laptops open in their car while they're typing and driving.
Yep.
And, you know, it's sad because they're the ones in power and they're the ones
And
that
the
are...
thing is, that's not even a personal laptop.
Right, it's a company laptop. It's in the car.
Yeah, it's actually something that they use when they're driving to check your license plate.
Right. So it's like, if you're going to make laws for the citizens to follow, you should be holding everybody else accountable for it as well.
And bringing that back around, because we got a couple of minutes before the next break, I wanted to touch in on why that's important, tied in with things like what Xbox One are doing. With people starting to get into the mindset of always online, always recorded, and Big Brother, there's absolutely no reason that you can't outfit your car with cameras.
Yeah.
They make IP cameras that are basically free roaming. And if you install one of the broadband connections that you can get through a cell phone company to a laptop, you can actually broadcast from your car.
Yep.
Constantly streaming. If you're worried about something like what happened to Rodney King,
Yep.
you know, or anything else, you know, police brutality, if you're worried about being targeted as, you know, profiled, you know, I'm a
Like
Saudi Arabian living, you know, born and raised in America, which when we come back, I actually have a sports thing to talk about.
Okay.
Put cameras in your car.
Yeah.
And
they're so easy to get nowadays, too.
Yeah, they're so easy to get. And all you have to do, put a sign on your window that says, by approaching this car, you are consenting to be recorded and streamed. And even if they change their mind and walk away, the damage has already been done.
Right.
Because you're live streaming to the internet.
Absolutely.
It's out there.
All right. So before we get